Good morning, lads. How are we?
Awesome as always.
We have no Ash today. Ash is in London.
Yeah, enjoying the UK.
I think she reported it was pretty cold, which, given how hot it is here at the moment.
Well, did you see the ice storm that came through New York?
I saw it was wasn't it -15?
Yeah, we're going to be there in 4 weeks.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. I remember last time I was in New York, which was a long time ago, it was cold as hell, and we were in one of those double-decker buses, like tourist buses, sitting up top in the middle of a transit strike. So we couldn't actually go anywhere, and my girlfriend at the time started crying because she was so cold. And so a lot of really good memories of New York.
Why does this always, it seems to find you, Don? Like you put yourself in these positions, it just happens to find you.
Well, I was going to ask what you guys were looking forward to. And one of the things I was looking forward to today was getting into the precinct, meeting with Andrew Barnes to go through a couple of bits and pieces. But I may not be able to do that because it would seem that the original survey that was done of my property was incorrect. And when the surveyors come back out and checked, it would seem that I've partly built the pool on council land.
Based on the numbers you shared, it's not a few centimetres either. It's like a decent overlap.
So the surveyor has to come back, and I'm trying to get him back ASAP, given we're about to put water in it. And I'm really trying to be calm, Jack, and I'm really trying to work out, like, was this my fault? But I've gone back to the surveyor, nice and calm, just saying, here's the original survey. Here's the measurements. Here's the measurements on site showing we're 1 metre inside the boundary. Please, can you help me understand where I have gone wrong? That's what I'm seeking to answer, because, yes, Jack, on one level, it would seem like there's this pattern that is self-created, but how can it be self-created if I've followed the measurements from the surveyor? Could you please answer that question for me, Jack?
Oh, Don. So I think Performance VC might be getting a few extra attendees.
I might need that container to work through this. So I'll ask the question, what are you looking forward to? Aaron, you seem like you're already in the precinct. Hopefully we'll see you soon, but...
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to finalising the participants for our US mission. So fingers crossed today we have a locked delegation because we are only 4 weeks away. So that and getting a press release approved so that we can announce our new funding that we've received and come out of embargo on that. So excited for both those things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What about you, Jacob boy?
I'm super excited for the US. I haven't been there since I was probably like 10 years old. I've been there once, so like haven't been there properly.
But it occurred to me last night, we actually have to do a few checks of our participants, given the US system now reviews all of their social media, checks if they're anti or pro-Trump. Like, we've actually got to do a bit more work this trip than I think we've had to do in prior trips.
Yeah. I was thinking about maybe even running all of our podcast episodes through some sort of algorithm to see if we're going to be allowed in.
Right, so I think we're lucky that Elon and Trump aren't buddies anymore, because Don, you wouldn't have been let in.
Yeah. And we still have space for probably a couple more. Any listeners that want to achieve greatness over there?
We'd only be able to take a couple more because of some of the limiting factors, like we've got to hire a bus and whatnot, but a few places left and still time to onboard. So we're 4 weeks out. We kick off on the 1st of March in San Francisco before heading over to New York. So get on board.
Are we going to hire a bus driver this time, or are you going to make one of us drive it?
No.
Does the funding allow for extra budget?
No, this isn't the Kindertails bus doing laps. This is we'll have a bus driver.
That's good. All right, well, let's get into it. I think it's fair to say, coming out of last year and into this year, I think we were all getting ready for a liquidity cycle about to start. There was talk about Canva going to do their IPO, others are going to do their IPO, and the reality is our asset class needs exits to recycle. But I think my gut feel is we're going to be sorely disappointed. One, because of public market multiples that we discussed in the last episode. And two, the Fed today just paused and didn't cut interest rates where a lot of people were thinking that they would. And I think we're going to find some of the Trump policies are going to ignite at least some short-term growth. And then when you look at Australia, which we're going to talk about shortly, I see no choice but an interest rate hiking cycle. And once they start hiking, they tend not to be able to stop. And so it seems that ROCT is one of the first to come out. ROKT, ROCT, rules out 2026 IPO as AI uncertainty rattles markets. ROCT, one of the country's most valuable venture-backed companies, says it will not proceed with plans for a float this year, citing serious share market volatility as investors grapple with the impact of mid-rollout artificial intelligence and what it will do to technology products. While ROCT, which helps retailers present shoppers with additional products and services at their online checkouts, has never explicitly said it intended to list, it has met with global and local fund managers and was assessing whether to float on the NASDAQ or ASX. The company, last valued at $7.2 billion, has also engaged Morgan Stanley for advice. Yeah, I think this is the beginning of a few of these. I just don't see how the conditions are ripe for it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure 26 will live up to the expectations that were talked about last year. It's interesting, though, this kind of repeats that same, I don't want to say rhetoric, but that same commentary around pointing the finger at AI uncertainty. And I'm not so sure that's what's at play, or maybe not the primary cause. I think there's a lot of uncertainty globally with everything that's happening geopolitically. I think, economic factors and other things. I'm not so convinced it's AI uncertainty. Maybe for companies like ROCT that aren't AI-led, maybe a differentiated value and those sort of things, yes, but I wouldn't describe that as AI uncertainty.
Yeah, I think it's like uncertainty whether your business will still be valuable in the face of AI.
Yeah.
We've got Chris Gillings and Albert from Folklore that we're recording an episode on the new Cut Through Venture report coming out, but there's a section in that report that just talks about the fast lane and the slow lane. And yeah, there's the certain lane and the uncertain lane probably. And there's just so much change. Like, it's great to hear that Harry Stebbings obviously listens to this podcast, because a couple of days ago, after I said I was leaving ChatGPT and going to Gemini, yesterday he posted the same thing.
I did see that. That's the second data point. So I need one more and I'm going to shift.
It's correlated already. It's got to be true.
Yeah. And so I think there is so much uncertainty. And then there's just a combination of factors. Geopolitical, is your business going to be that sort of natural leader? Interest rates. I think the liquidity cycle that we were hoping for just isn't coming.
But so in the M&A space, I've like, when we do the sale documentation, we use Canva, and like, I'm not using all of the features, like I'm sure of it. And I love Canva, but comparing the user experience on Canva today versus going on to Replit, like I know they do different things, but it's like they're a totally different experience. And like my view, and I know it's not a strong view because I don't know the platform very well, but like they're so far behind in terms of the capability that's actually live. And that's a company that is still, and like that's a company that's still in the fast lane. Like they're doing all these acquisitions, they're going to do an IPO. There's so much heat around it, momentum. But like, I still think personally, there's so much uncertainty. Like there's still so much risk there in the face of AI because we just don't know.
Yeah. It was interesting chatting to a founder in here at the precinct yesterday, and he was describing over the summer break, he basically killed all of their SaaS subscriptions, switched to Airtable, and built out like their own apps with AI that do everything customer spoke, exactly like we talked about last episode.
And what we've done, like on the treadmill this morning, I want to learn Airtable more. So I just put a half an hour video on a guy giving me the full overview of Airtable, and immediately now I understand why you guys have implemented it internally and why we're going to be able to turn off a whole lot of things. And so you then go to Gemini, which is then included in our Pro subscription, I don't see why we need to. What's ChatGPT's costing us? What, $200 a month or something? To me, it's like we can cull that.
I did see, so Lovable, they're rolling out features for, I think it's like slides or presentations. Because that's like when I was using Canva, it's like, why am I spending time trying to come up with design when I know I'm not good at design? I hate doing it, but it needs to be done. Like it has to look professional, but it's just not something I'm good at. And it's so easy to think if we can do one shot for a website, the design is covered for you. Like for that to then transcend into a different domain, like it's so close.
And I think it's that one shot ability, like with that, what I demoed last week of that little family office management system. The family office often gets left with the owner's personal assets as well. Boats, cars, toys, machinery. And that was discussed. And so the prompt was, I need to add a feature here that can handle private assets like boats, cars, aircraft, machinery, and we have to deal with registration, maintenance logs, insurance. Do some research online of all of the criteria and things we would need to manage if we were managing those kinds of assets. And like it goes away and thinks for a couple of minutes, comes back, and wasn't 100%, but it's like, there it is. It's like, okay, so add the boats, add the cars, add all the different bits and pieces. Now you've got a tool where your insurance doesn't get lost. It adds it to your corporate calendar, regos, maintenance logs, like all one shot.
I was thinking about Xero, like, so this found turn to yesterday. They were saying the only thing they haven't replaced is Xero, and partly because it's integrated with Accountant and whatnot. But Xero is pretty lackluster. Like I was in there trying to use their AI tool to do some things and clean up accounts and check data, and it's so limited in what it can do. But it also, I feel stuck there. So I feel like there is this moat that they have, partly because of the network effect of our accountant being on there and different things. But I still have this question mark: at what point do we just use something like Replit to build an accounting tool and ditch a platform like that?
Yeah, and this is why incumbency becomes a problem, because when you have a look at Xero and the way they've got their lock-in strategy, and the CEO earns what, 27 million a year, where's the incentive structures for them to want to burn anything down and change themselves? There isn't. And when executives and CEOs have a tenure of what, 2, 3, 4 years, they're going to optimize for their REM for those 2, 3, 4 years. And that's one of the reasons why companies just grind to a halt and die, and up comes the new thing.
But it is so crazy to think Xero could potentially lose their competitive advantage, like for something that has been so strong for the past 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm looking forward to it, because that would be rude, but as a reminder, I have mentioned that I met with the first chairman of Xero and could have put money in it. I think it was like 50 cents. However, I didn't think the world needed another accounting platform system. I blame the chairman, because he didn't explain actually what they were creating and the network effects of it and all of those things. So it definitely wasn't my fault. But if Xero was to end back at 50 cents, it would then validate me not investing.
Being right or not is just a question of timing, right? Just wait long enough.
Yeah, on the horizon. Coming back to the broader point, it wasn't just them, but another IPO that had been spoken about was Airwallex. And it says, Money Mule risk just stopped Airwallex IPO march in its tracks. Austrac chief Brendan Thomas is worried about the exposure of tech unicorns Airwallex to money mules who use fake accounts to funnel child sex payments. Australian-born payment technology company Airwallex might not have publicly declared it was preparing IPO, but all of the signs were there: a big capital raising in December, an acquisition to enter a new market, and a full court of publicity press that includes an appearance on television channel CNBC, in which the co-founder and chief executive Jack Zhang declared burnout never entered his mind despite working 80-hour weeks. But the near-term thoughts of an IPO will now be shelved, as Zhang has some extra long weekends ahead of him. as the Anti-Money Laundering Agency, AUSTRAC, ordered an appointment of external auditors. And so, again, different reasons, but something like an Airwallex coming public and those dollars coming back into the system would be really important. But I think this is slightly linked to what we said last time with them trying to silence the media reporting the issues that people perceived inside there. What tends to happen is you become fodder for others, and I think we'll continue to see this.
Yeah, that I made the connection back to that. Like for me, these types of malicious and criminal uses of platforms like Airwallex are every day, and I would imagine, having spent a bit of time in this space, like AUSTRAC would be having investigations there all the time. And of itself, it doesn't seem like a big issue, but I think like we predicted last episode or 2 episodes ago, like there will be more articles like this, and then it creates the public perception, which then impacts any potential IPO. So again, I think there's other data points beyond just that one factor as to why they're not going to list.
Which I find quite crazy, because if you look under the hood, like the fundamentals of the business is going up and to the right, but there's just so much noise that is like, it's not even relevant.
But that's a great point, Jack. Like Don says all the time, like you'd have to be a bit insane to list, because now you've got this bloody voting machine of sentiment that you are navigating and building your business for, which is a complete freaking distraction from building a great, healthy business. Like you think those two things are in alignment, but they can be in conflict.
Yeah, I think anybody that wants to list first needs to lie on a couch and unpack all of the emotional issues that are driving them to want to do that. I certainly wish I had.
Performance VC offside.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do was maybe just, a lot of the publicity is around these issues inside Airwallex. But I just wanted to remind people that there's an organizational life cycle that does exist, and you can't give birth to an adult. And some of the challenges that are being reported are, they're not desirable, but they're normal. And the role then, I think, of investors, the board, the CEO, and then through the management is actually to accept that a life cycle exists, accept that you can't give birth to an adult, and then create a path where you can develop in a healthy manner. And again, one of my issues with a listed environment is that it's designed for adults, adult companies. And if you prematurely list before you have your systems, process, and controls properly dealt with, that environment can create premature aging, where you actually skip all of that and you end up in an aging phase that then also kills the company. So I thought I would just quickly run through and try my best to share the visual. I'm going to click start. Can you see that just as a single slide?
Yep.
So what I have in front of me for those listening at home is a bell curve. And on the bell curve, there are different phases. It goes up and then it goes down. And on the left-hand side is the growing phase of the life cycle, where, in the human life cycle, we have the courtship of our parents, who then get together, give birth to an infant that becomes a toddler, that becomes a teenager and an adult. And then we peak at middle age, which I hope was a little later, but on the treadmill this morning, I certainly didn't feel peak. And then you have the aging phase of, the golden age, then, move to Noosa or move to wherever your version of that is. And then unfortunately, we enter this phase where it's like move into the nursing home and then it's all over Red Rover. And this is the normal sort of life cycle. There are some unfortunate situations where that life cycle isn't able to play out, and there's early demise, but most of the time this is what it looks like. And from a human context, there's before you can say what is a problem, you need to understand what's normal, abnormal, and fatal for any phase of the life cycle. And as I've said before, my 2-year-old daughter wakes up screaming at night sometimes, is unstable on her feet, wets the bed from occasion, and is emotionally all over the shop. Now, when her father wakes up screaming, wets the bed, is emotionally unstable, my wife gets a bit upset. And it seems unfair on the face of it. Why do my children get away with it and dad can't? Why does dad always have to go to the therapist? Because for the kids, it's normal, right? It's normal. And for dad, if he's exhibiting those symptoms, that's abnormal. And so before you actually start talking about what's normal and abnormal, you've actually got to understand where you are in the life cycle, because what you do about it, if you were to try and stop those symptoms of a 2-year-old, you are going to do significant damage. You are going to stunt their growth and you're going to cause a lot of problems. The role of the parent is to help it move up the life cycle. Now, again, the same with parental leadership. How you manage a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-year-old is totally different to a 15, 16, 17-year-old. Your leadership has to change. It has to move from one of benevolent dictatorship of, no, that's it, go to bed. No, you can't have those lollies. No, you can't put the knife in the toaster. You have to be quite dictatorial. But if you're still like that when the kid's in the teenage years, good luck to you. Clothing, opportunities, goals, rewards, like everything has its life cycle location. And so Ishak Adesius, where this comes from, adapted this to the corporate life cycle, where companies get born, they go into this go-go phase. If they survive the go-go toddler phase where everything looks wonderful and they take on too much and sort of get themselves into a bit of trouble, they can get into the adolescence phase where it's time for the business to grow up away from its founders. So it gets its own vision and mission. But that's often where a lot of businesses fail and founders get spat out of the company and the shareholders take over, or it goes back into a founder trap type mode where they appoint an external CEO or general manager or whatever. And because they haven't done the right approach to that, because they haven't brought in the right systems, process, controls before appointing that role, you often see a pattern of it turning to shit. But for a very small percentage of companies, they get through to what's called prime. And that's really the goal. Now, we don't measure age. We don't measure revenue, whatever else. We're measuring the relationship between two sort of broad ingredients. Like when a company is born, it's flexibility, right? It's ability to do different things and go in different directions and try and do things all at once. That's very high. But as we know from both the human life cycle and the corporate life cycle, and even countries, have a look at, the US, over time, flexibility can decline. You're just no longer as flexible as what you were before. You are unable to respond in the manner that you were able to respond before, because you've now got silos. You've now got remuneration structures. You've now got a product line, a clear vision and mission. To sort of go and change, like the conversation with Zero, to suddenly go and change when you've got low flexibility now is really difficult. Now, when you're really young as well, your controls, your controllability, your predictability, your systems, all of that is very low. And then as things age, both in a human and corporate sense, those controls and predictability hopefully start to increase. But then at a certain point in the life cycle, control and predictability, that decreases down as well. Now, where these two lines of control and flexibility meet for the second time, that's death, right? It's all over Red Rover. No flexibility, no control, no predictability, the end. But where it meets for the first time is what we describe as prime. I don't have the full flexibility to go off and do all this stuff that I want to go and do, but I've now got some systems, process, controls, rhythms, order, and that's sort of the goal, I believe, of shareholders, CEOs, founders, management teams, is to help their companies move up the life cycle to become adults. But the problem is what you need to do at each phase is different. And the issue is not the phases, it's the transitions between the phases. Going from that infancy into go-go into adolescence, adolescence into prime. And then once you're in prime, staying the hell away from the aging sort of aristocracy, recrimination and bureaucracy phases. And so in a young company, even if you're $1 billion unicorn, if you're growing rapidly with high flexibility and you haven't had the time yet to develop systems, process and controls, you're going to have a few problems. right? And when you have a look at a Airwallex, even there was even the NBN originally, this big government thing with billions of dollars worth of backing, building something that's been built before. If you think back to the original problems of the NBN, it was all around planning and controls and communication, because they just hadn't yet built out the controls and the predictability and all those aspects. And so with an Airwallex, everybody sort of jumps on these problems, but when you actually analyze the problems, they haven't yet had the time, the space, the people. Most entrepreneurs don't like doing this work, which is why you need to bring in professional management often to do it, to bring in the systems, process, and controls to actually have the right training, have the right risk controls, have all of those ingredients. And when you've got really high flexibility and you're trying to open in new markets, new products, new, that means you never have the time to actually develop those process and controls. And so rather than just looking at Airwallex through the lens of, oh, that's bad, it's not desired, but actually a lot of these things are normal. But until they actually understand what's normal and abnormal and put some focus into moving up this phase of the life cycle, it's going to continue. So anyway, I'll pause there because I just wanted to, remind people of that, because I think people have too high expectations sometimes that, just because it's a unicorn, just because it's got these investors, just because it's doing billions of dollars, as if that somehow is supposed to make you systemized and an adult. It's like, no, only a program of work to move up the life cycle is going to do that.
I think this is really good for investors to understand too. Like we see some investors coming in trying to implement controls, governance and things into a very early stage company that can really hinder growth. But one thing, Donna, can you share, like when you share this with founders, sometimes they index to time, like how long ago they founded, as if that reflects in the life cycle. But could you just decouple their age from it?
I know companies that are 3 or 4 years old that are in the aging phase of the life cycle because they didn't do this work. The founders have fallen out. They're now trying to use rules and processes and controls to try and control each other. And they now no longer have any flexibility. There's a lot of conflict and the business dies. And I've dealt with companies that are 50, 60, 70 years old, still at the early stage, because they're like 4th generation family businesses that make hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And when you make that amount of money, you can hide a lot of screw ups. And when you've got intergenerational transfer of leadership that are born into the company, often you don't need the systems, process, and controls because you're not hiring people from the outside until the lack of systems, process, and controls causes a screw up, and that then causes a crisis, and then it's a crisis that kills the company. And so it's not size of company, it's not revenue, it's not age, it's a series of factors, which is why before we do any portfolio support work, the first exercise I do is going in and getting a cross section of the organization to come together in a quick workshop where we go and actually diagnose as a team, not me. Founders and their teams do not need another consultant. They do not need to be told what's going wrong. They know what's going wrong, but they often lack the space, the process, and the mechanisms to actually identify these issues, align around them, prioritize them, make a plan about them, and then implement them in the face of day-to-day demands. That's the big killer. If you could pause the world and say, right, I've got these 10 problems this month. I'm going to pause the business. I'm going to tell customers to piss off for a bit. We just need some time to build our systems, process, and controls. Life would be really easy, but you can't. You got to fly the bloody plane while you're building it. And that's what we do, is we help founders do that bit. And so it's getting them to ignore how much revenue, how many staff. It's actually, let's diagnose together all of the issues in the business. And then I want you to diagnose where you are in the life cycle. My opinion doesn't really matter. It's where do you and the team see yourselves on the life cycle, right? And often you'll be at different phases of the life cycle, and different divisions will be at different phases of the life cycle. So once we then have team alignment, then we can prioritize our issues in the phase of the life cycle. So then that way, what we work on actually moves up the life cycle. And so the idea is to work on the minimum amount of issues that will get you the maximum amount of impact. But too often, founders are working on things that aren't going to help them move up the life cycle. And often they're influenced by investors that don't have this model, that are going to keep them at that phase of the life cycle. And then we wonder why everything turns to shit, because it's, growth at all costs. What we say is we want growth, but we want healthy development, not arbitrary growth. Cancer is a form of growth. Cancer is not what we want inside an organization. We want healthy growth. We want healthy development. We don't want arbitrary growth for the sake of growth. And if you then develop in a healthy manner, then one of the potential outcomes is healthy results and actually build something of long-term value rather than a rocket ship that could, blow up at any moment.
I love all of this DZ's framework and content, like the way the pips integrate into this and knowing what problem is a relevant problem to be focused on. And I did have a moment yesterday where I was like, fuck, if we just didn't have all these missions and offsites and other things to organize, I could actually get some work done. It's just like actually building out the next phase. But yeah, knowing what to work on. But I think for founders, sometimes, when they hear this type of thing, it's like, oh, I'll get to that. This is great. Love it, Don. But we'll do that next year. I've got so much shit to solve for now. And I think there is this not actually seeing the forest for the trees and being stuck in the trenches, when actually that's the most critical time. You've got to be implementing this stuff from day zero.
The time to run away from a lion is not when you sort of got a decrepit leg and in a wheelchair. You want to actually be healthy. And too often we do strategy and we do structure and we do vision and mission and say, we're going to climb that mountain. But often the strategies don't look and say, hang on a minute, this person's overweight, unfit, twisted ankle, smoking 10 ciggies an hour. You're in no condition yet to actually climb that, and then wonder why they didn't hit their goals. Now, it's important to do both. All we're saying is start with, understand where you are, understand what's normal, what's abnormal, and then create a program of work that actually has the life cycle in mind. And what I like about it is it de-energizes, or at least helps get rid of some negative energy. Because when you get a team of people that go, hang on a minute, we're actually not dysfunctional. We're not as bad as we thought. This is actually normal. And hang on, the reward of solving all of the problems of this phase of the life cycle is just all of the problems at the next phase of the life cycle. And as you move up the life cycle, the problems get bigger and broader. Like, when Maggie was 3 months in her, you know what it's like, Jack, with Louis. You look back at the last phase, even though it was really difficult in the moment, and you look back at now with fondness going, fuck, I wish I only had those problems to deal with. True or not?
Oh, so true. Hindsight.
And it's the same with founders when you actually move through those phases. But what makes it the transition really painful is if you're not intentional about it and you don't have a model, and you don't have someone outside your painting helping you see the whole picture. Because when you're in the painting, it's hard to see the whole picture. And that's sort of our role. And to then help teams of people come together and go, as we point out to them, the only time you have no problems is when you're dead. So as long as you are alive, you are going to have problems. The key is to have the right problems in the right sequence. And if you want to scale and grow, what you're actually saying and your investors are actually saying is, if you're going to grow by 50%, I want you to have more and more problems next year. But nobody really puts it like that. And that's why we probably try and find as many problems as possible, not to not do the deal, but to know what we're going into and actually give them the right prescription. We just want them diagnosing themselves. They don't need another person coming in and telling them what's wrong. That's what the AFR is for.
Or making up shit that's wrong.
Anyway, I thought I wanted to just share that because it's been a while since we redid that. And then segueing a little bit, one of the things, especially the early stage of the life cycle, what is abnormal is if you try and be too perfect. And I just saw this little post that gave me a chuckle by Linus Balloonus. It says, for anyone who thinks they need a perfect product before launch, always remember that Google Maps in 2005 went live without Europe and no Asia, no Africa. Half the planet was missing. And yet it still became the most used map in history. The lesson, if Google could launch maps without Europe, your product probably doesn't need every feature. Ship it, learn, expand. Yeah.
Yep.
That is one of the challenges of Replit, though. When you can one shot with a prompt add functionality, in 1 week, the little family office management tool, and I've just explained before, one little feature that I've added, this thing is a behemoth that would leave Salesforce for dead now. And that's the risk and the problem, because it becomes too easy now to cheaply, in inverted commas, add MVP type functionality that now you're going to have to resource to actually build out properly, because we're not there yet where you're one-shot enterprise yet.
That's a really good point. And it reminds me of a convo I was having yesterday with a founder in Silicon Valley, talking about, he was asking what do we see as the signals of a good founder as distinguished from maybe a not so good founder. And I brought it back to focus on product versus focus on distribution as one of the components. But the ability for something like Replit for you to be totally absorbed in the product side, building the most amazing thing, and not actually focus on the distribution side or durability. I do see that as a risk, but I just see more bifurcation. Like, it'll separate the good founders from the bad.
Yeah, 100%. And then there was another post by Jason Lemkin. Just got an investor update from a 10-year-old vertical SaaS company I invested in a long time ago. Founders never quit, know the space, but it's been a grind. And they are far, far, far from AI native. However, they finally used AI late last year to automate a critical type of data collection and analysis that could never properly be done before for their customer base. Their customers now love it. It makes the product radically more valuable. Interest has exploded. They've had 5x the attendance to their webinars. And now for the first time since founding, they're back to 100% growth. Okay, it's not Harvey or 11 Labs or Replit, but 100% growth for the first time since 2017. I then shared this with a couple of portfolio on the non-tribe side and a couple from the tribe side, and a couple of them were like, "Why are you attacking me?" But there are stories out here, and I think there's another 6 months probably where you've got this opportunity, or you're going to be just swamped. But all that was old has the opportunity to be new again, I think. But it comes back a bit to that. You've got to fly the plane and build at the same time. Founders being able to find the resources and the brain space and the decision-making to come up with this stuff are the ones that are going to win, not the ones that are most intelligent.
Yeah, someone quoted back to me the other day, my rule zero, don't get dead. And you know how we talk a lot about cockroaching it, but that of itself is not sufficient. There are other things you still have to do in order to succeed. It's not purely a matter of the joke I made before, which is wait long enough and you'll be right once. It takes effort at some point to actually translate to results.
Well, intention, and it's understanding and saying, okay, well, if I didn't get to implement this in 2025, and now it's pretty clear what I need to do, and I'm still not finding it easy. If you always do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten, or whatever that saying is, right? Like, until you make a change in your managerial process and the way that you make decisions and implement and find time, until you change that, nothing's going to change. And those are the companies that are going to succeed. A lot of bright founders are going to lament and question why they could never survive in the end, even though they roughly knew what to do. As a segue to the end, speaking of bright founders, and one of our founders that I think started using agents and AI really early on and was posting about it publicly was Canopy founder Nigel Fellows Freeman. And he has been shortlisted for Global Insurance Personality of the Year. Now, Nigel, well done. The only thing was insurance and personality. That like that's the only bit that when I saw that, I was like, that industry is very funny. Having come from that industry, but Nigel is top class personality, so he deserves to win it.
There is also a machine-like element to Nigel, which is just like, get it done. But yeah, well done, Nigel.
Nigel put, what makes it even better is that Canopy's also shortlisted for Best Workplace Culture and Technology Partner of the Year, which says far more about the team and partners than it does about one person. That's what Nigel has, I think, in spades, is the ability to still be founder-like, head down, bum up. I wouldn't want to cross him when he's frustrated, but he is someone that does understand culture, climate, and this isn't his first rodeo, right? And so it's always a proud moment for investors when you see a portfolio out there living it and doing it. And also just has I think we've shared a few times, the beginning of our investment into Canopy, the ARR did not go in the right direction. But he didn't get carried away. He didn't burn his bridges. He executed, and he's going to get the rewards for
it. The Keeley slump that turned and transitioned.
Yeah, I think it was worse than the Keeley slump. Like it's probably been the hardest post-investment that we've seen, and like nothing went right. Even culture, he had to recalibrate, and Nigel like stayed true to the process. And I think now the tide's turned for him.
Yeah, haven't had any swag from him in a while.
Well,
Nigel, Jack's sitting here Jack's sitting there in a tribe shirt. It's embarrassing.
If I had a count of how many times I've worn that jumper.
Yeah. No, well done, Nigel. And then just a final thing, just to remind that I found was funny. Replit's AI coding agent deleted a company's entire production database and then hid it and lied about it, which tells me that the Replit agent is actually just human.
Yeah, either AI is a total hoax and it's just people on a hamster wheel in the background just making it all happen, or the AI has ingested all of human knowledge and behavior and is replicating it. This is I've had tech teams literally do this. It's like, what? We didn't have that data. What are you talking about?
So I just had to put that in there because Ash isn't on the call. Just to remind, be safe, secure, backups, all of that. I don't have it in the schedule, but there's a lot of noise at the moment with that new what's it called?
Claw something, isn't it?
Yeah, Clawbot, which seems to be gaining a lot of momentum in terms of being able to run on your local device, have access to your messages, emails, credit card, and can go and finally actually do stuff. And there was, I don't know if it's true or not, but let's pretend it was. There was a funny post where, because this bot now has access to all the emails, all the tasks, and sort of see how dysfunctional this person was, then was watching, apparently it got an offer from Alex Hormozi to improve like output, creativity, execution. The bot looked at its human and went, you need this, and then used the credit card to buy a $2,900 course on execution with Hormozi. And then when the human goes in and asks what the hell happened and why did you do this and don't do it again, like the bot almost threatens the human with, well, if you don't sort your shit out, you know, you're going to fail. And it was actually quite humorous. But this is like we're close to this. But yeah, any listeners that can reach out that have been using this, Ash, I spoke to about it, she's not going to use it yet, Claudebot, until they've worked out some of the security. And prompt injection threat on bots is high. Let me just in real time, prompt injection threat. What is a prompt injection threat? It's a cyber attack against large language models where hackers disguise malicious inputs as legitimate prompts, manipulating and generating AI systems into leaking sensitive data, spreading misinformation or worse. So yeah, she's saying you got to keep it sandboxed.
I was thinking more about that pitch call yesterday around confidential computing. You can really see the event horizon that's coming with this stuff, like the ability to know, has something occurred when I wasn't present? with my data set or with an environment. Like, you can see that very quickly that's going to have to become mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll do more on that next week. Well, let's jump into some charts. This is a chart that I think should scare most people. This is the annual inflation rate for Australia going back to 2010. We obviously had the rapid spike through COVID, then it came back, but now we've had another month where inflation has been above forecast and above target. So either the RBA is going to stick to their target and raise, or they're going to let it continue to happen. But a body in motion tends to stay in motion, and when you look at everything that's occurring globally, I can't see anything other than more and more expensive stuff. And so, yeah.
Much like the causality of it raining whenever I pitch a tent, that timing correlates exactly with when we got our mortgage for our house. So thank you, universe. Great.
Yeah, picked it. The Birkby effect. Did you go fixed or variable?
Variable.
Fair enough.
What do you go down? Just out of curiosity.
Pardon? I'm variable at the moment, but I was fixed, but it rolled off. The problem with Australia, I mean, the maximum horizon you can fix is what, like five years.
Yeah.
Yeah. When is it we can get mortgages from overseas on Aussie properties? Like, how can we navigate that?
No, well, we need
fixed rate would be pretty decent.
We need more tailwinds, do we? More reasons.
That is true. Why is no? Yeah. Anyway, don't even get me started.
Yeah. These are charts for those at home showing the number of Europeans traveling to the US since Trump won office, and it has cratered. And some family members were just in Vegas, and they remarked at how quiet it was. And then one of our portfolios is currently in Minnesota. So I've asked him to please stay away from protest, demonstration, and stay away from ICE.
Yes, both varieties.
That's right. This is a chart of the office mortgage. So this is like office tower mortgage delinquencies, and they continue to go up and to the right. Keep in mind that the global financial crisis had peaked at 10.5%. We're about to hit 10%. So still a lot of pain in that market. I don't know if you've been following gold and silver, but it's now entered its unbelievable volatility phase just on the CFDs. And this is the problem. We've become such a financialized market. In a day, we went up we went up 500 billion. The next day we went down 1 trillion. And then the following day, up another 500 billion. I mean, this is wild volatility. It's not on the actual underlying, it's on a contract for difference, a CFD. But yeah, just wild shit happening out there. But if you have a look at the bond market, and this particular one is the 30-day range for the 10-year yield, it's actually closed at its tightest position since 1972. So very low volatility on the bond market, at least in this particular one. And if investors in the bond market are sort of generally seen as the rational ones and sort of see around walls and over the horizon, they're not jumping up and down too much. This is an interesting chart. This is just some random charts going back for the last 10 years, a segment regression analysis of psilocybin-related metrics. And this is a J-curve up and to the right. So clinical trials using psilocybin have gone from sub 5,000 up to like nearly 60, and the J-curve since 2020. And keep in mind that Australia decriminalised and then made MDMA and psilocybin available for use for certain cases. It was one of the first countries to do it. And now it's up and to the right in terms of trials and tests and universities looking at it. Papers in publication, again, is up and to the right. Adults reporting the use is up and to the right. Yeah. And it was related to, that Brian Johnson dude who's the going to live forever wellness.
Yep.
I don't understand this chart, so I'm sort of glad that Ash isn't here to critique me on it. But he's been doing psilocybin every couple of months and then measuring like everything, his brain, the whole box and dice. But this chart is showing, I think, the milligrams of cortisol and then comparing it to jet lag on a flight to Asia. But I don't, can you work out anything here? Like the problem is, I don't know what the dots are.
Or my own interpretation is that the effect of magic mushrooms on your cortisol levels are similar to the effect of jet lag on your cortisol levels. But
okay, Ash, if you're listening, we miss you. So this is a table of shark catchers on drum lines, and there's been a lot of news with all of the, obviously, shark attacks. And given I've been someone for nearly 35 years that swims in rivers and goes skiing and does all of those things and really wants that for my children, it's a bit hard not to get a little bit nervous at how sharky it seems to be getting. But if you have a look at calendar year 2022, 23, 24, 25 of the catches, number caught in these, like these are venture returns, are they not? Of shark volumes? Like
what the hell happened in 24 and 25? Like it just jumped up massively.
Well, some of the things when there's been a whole lot of rule changes to protect, and then that starts to flow through, and especially with bull sharks enter river systems, they go down into the tributary and they give birth to 10, 20 pups at a time. And then when you then introduce limits on what commercial and private fishermen can do, these like I don't know enough, but some people describe them, especially these sharks, a bit like bin chickens, about the ibis. They're the ibis of the seas. They proliferate if unchecked. But yeah, I, as someone who loves taking their kids skiing, but that's why I like going out to Maroon Dam now, because the only thing I've got to worry about is Loch Ness Monster, which my imagination still doesn't like swimming in water that's 60 meters deep. It's a bit weird. This is not a chart, but I just wanted to discuss this. So this was a screenshot of my McDonald's orders for the kids last night, because Libby had put the dinner in the oven, and then she goes out to dinner. And then I let the kids play in the sprinkler. And they were just having fun time. Like, why would I stop that? And so it ended up going for like an hour, and I forgot I had the dinner in, and I came back in and it's all burnt to crisp. So now they're hungry. I got to go McDonald's. But I ordered at 5:15 and it said it would be delivered at 5:45. And then the system here says now arriving at 6:24. I screenshotted this at 6:19. That McDonald's is 12 minutes away. Like that. Is there not an ACCC thing to deal with here? Because when has Uber ever come close to its forecast time? If I had known this was going to be the case, I would have jumped in the car.
Yeah, 100%. Uber is so shit now. Like, you go to order a car and it gives you this 4 minutes away. Then when it actually books the car, it's like the other freaking side of the city. It's like 30 minutes. And then the damn thing cancels 3 minutes later. You start the whole process again.
Where are the regulators?
It's even worse in Adelaide. You think it's so bad in Brisbane? Come to Adelaide.
All right, what are we looking forward to?
I think the stuff I shared at the start, like getting these mission participants squared away. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm still looking forward to the US. Don't know what I'm doing this weekend, but of course looking forward to that.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to our session with Chris and Albert on Cut Through. We are now, well, sorry, not we. I am now conflicted having a small investment in a crowdfunding platform. So I'm going to be asking Chris, now that the turntables have turned, what's your problem? Get on board.
This could be the end of a good relationship.
Yeah. Let's just see how easily I can be bought and change my tune. That's what it's gonna come down to. All right. I'll hopefully see you in soon, Aaron, pending what this surveyor says.
All right, guys.
All right. See ya. Mate.
See ya.
Thanks, boys.